So when I first started Genshin Impact, I didn't have very many characters at my disposal. The only characters that I currently had at the time were your standard free-to-play ones like Noelle, Barbara, Xiangling, and a couple others. I did not start with any 5-star characters. Now, I could have re-rolled and I could have easily have gotten it, but eventually what would wind up happening, and this is before I got Xiangling, I wound up pulling 3 5-star characters back to back. Those characters being 2 Monas and 1 Chi-Chi. So when I pulled double Mona, I had the bright idea of making her my primary DPS. And to be completely honest with you, I think I've been able to do it, save for some levels in the Abyss. And the reason being is because the Abyss is highly geared towards pyro characters and even electro characters. So to get this question out of the way, is Mona comparable to characters like Diluc, Klee, and Kuching? The answer is no, she's not. Now the real question then becomes, is she able to be used as a primary DPS? Well, every character in Genshin Impact is able to be used as a primary DPS with enough time and effort and probably the right setup. And in this video, I'm going to be talking about her thick thighs. I mean, I'm going to be talking about how I was able to make her into my primary DPS and what I'm going to be doing to make it even better. Now, in case you don't know anything about Mona, Mona is a Hydro caster style character. Now, which means is that her primary damage source is Hydro damage. Unlike physical characters, she does not imbue her attacks with any sort of element. They are naturally of the Hydro element. But before we get into actually how I build her, let's talk about Mona, her talents, and her constellations, because the talents will actually tell us one particular stat that we should be looking for when it comes to our substats. Now, Mona's normal attack is she does 4 attacks that deal Hydro damage in quick succession. And with a charge attack, she's able to deal AoE Hydro damage after charging it for a little bit of time. Now at level 1, these talents deal 37.6% damage on the first attack, leading all the way up to the 4th attack, which deals 56.16% damage. And then at level 15, it deals 89.3% damage on the first attack, leading all the way up to 133.38 on the 4th attack. Then her charged attack deals 149.72% damage at level 1, while at level 15 deals 366.51% damage. Now her next skill is Mirror Reflection of Doom. While it is a good support ability, it does deal a decent amount of damage. Mirror Reflection of Doom basically makes it so that way enemies will be drawn towards it, similar to Amber's Baron Bunny, but this time it deals Hydro damage in an AoE fashion to all enemies nearby. And once it expires, it also blows up into AoE Hydro damage as well. Now the cool thing about the skill is that when you hold it down, it actually causes Mona to be able to do a backstep before proccing the ability, so that way it can be used as an escape. Her next ability is Illusionary Torrent, which is basically her sprint. The cool thing about her sprint is that if she goes in through her sprint for too long, she's able to deal wet onto enemies upon resurfacing. Then we have her big damaging ability, Stellaris Phantasm. Stellaris Phantasm actually traps enemies inside a pocket of destiny, making them wet, and also renders weaker enemies immobile, while also making it so when enemies who are affected by the illusionary bubble sustain additional damage. Now, once the ability expires after 8 seconds, the illusionary bubble detonates into a massive field of damage. Now, the added damage effect actually only lasts anywhere between 4 to 5 seconds depending on the level of the ability. Stellaris Phantasm as a whole, illusionary bubble explosion damage can detonate at level 1 to 442.4% damage, leading all the way up to level 15 and to a massive 1050.7% damage. Now the ultimate is on a 15-second cooldown and only costs 60 energy, for which Mona, it's actually really easy to get that energy back. Then you have another ability called Come and Get Me Hag, which basically means that Mona is able to create a phantom from her sprint, which deals 50% of the damage that Mirror Reflection of Doom would have been able to do. Then you have one of her greatest passive talents called Waterborne Destiny, which basically increases Mona's Hydro damage by a degree equivalent to 20% of her energy recharge rate, making it so that when energy recharge, while not a primary stat from Mona, is in fact an amazing stat that only serves to additionally boost her damage further. Now that we got that out of the way, let's go quickly take a look at her constellations, because now we know that energy recharge is an incredibly good stat on Mona. However, you will not be speccing into this primarily because it still is only 20% of the energy recharge rate gets converted into Hydro damage. Now I got lucky enough to get my Mona to Constellation 2, which allows me to make her into a primary DPS that much easier. Now her first constellation, Prophecy of Submersion, makes it so that way any Hydro related elemental reactions are enhanced for 8 seconds after any of your other party members hit an enemy who's affected by Omen, which is a debuff calls from her ultimate. That basically boosts the duration of Frozen by 15%. Hydro Swirl, Vaporize, and Electrocharge are also increased damage by 15% as well. Then you have, in my opinion, one of the greatest constellations that Mona has, which is Lunar Chain. Is whenever a normal attack hits, there is a 20% chance that it is automatically followed by a charged attack, and this effect can only occur once every 5 seconds. The lovely thing about the charged attack this time is that it actually does not require stamina when used in this fashion, but it still does the boosted damage from using sets like Wanderers or anything else that increases charge damage. Then you have two other constellations, Relentless Revolution and Mockery of Fortuna, which basically increase the levels of her Mirror Reflection of Doom and her Stellaris Phantasm by 3 levels. Then you have Prophecy of Oblivion, which basically makes it so any party member who attacks an opponent affected by Omen increases their critical rate by 15%. Then you have her Rhetoric of Calamitas, which is basically whenever she's in her sprint, she's able to gain 60% increase to her next charge attack damage per second of movement to a max of 3 seconds, which equals out to 180% additional bonus damage, and that skill only lasts for 8 seconds. All right, now let's get to the fun part, the gear that we're gonna put on Mona and also the characters that we're gonna be using in our party. All right, so because Mona deals in primary Hydra damage, we're gonna be putting a Hydra challenge on her, and the substats that we're going to be looking for are crit chance, crit damage, energy recharge, attack, and attack percent. Any combination of those 5 will work for Mona as your main DPS or even as your support if you want her to deal additional damage. Now on a timepiece, you can want to be using attack percent with, again, you're going to be using the same substats that we found before. Now the crown, headpiece, or hat, whatever you want to call it, really depends on what your current substats are. In this slot, like with any other major DPS, you can wind up using one of 3 stats: crit rate, crit damage, or even attack. While I prefer putting attack percent on my pieces of gear, it really depends on whether or not you have at least 50% crit rate and you have 100% crit damage or more. Now, assuming that you got lucky and you actually have enough attack, crit chance, energy recharge, you can actually put crit damage instead of attack, to be completely honest with you. Then the flower and feather are pretty much the same for everybody. They're always going to come in flat HP and flat attack. And then again, just to reiterate, you're going to be using the same either combination of 5 subsets that we were talking before, which are crit rate, crit damage, attack, attack percent, and energy recharge. Now, depending on whether or not you're going to be using her as a main DPS like I am, you can actually go with a variety of different sets when it comes to gearing out your Mona. You'd use 2-piece gladiators into 2-piece noblesse. If you have her at Constellation 2, then you can even go as far as to using a full set of Wanderers. And then if you're using Mona as a primary support character, you can actually go ahead and use a full set of Noblesse. Personally, because I have her at Constellation 2, I love using the Wanderer set, but ideally I think that if I were to maximize the amount of damage that I'm dealing, because I use her as a primary DPS, I would wind up using a 2-piece Gladiator and a 2-piece Noblesse Oblige. There are a ton of different books that you can use on Mona depending on whether or not you're using her as a primary DPS or even a support, making her incredibly versatile, especially if you are a free-to-play player. Personally, I prefer using the Skyward Atlas, because what the Skyward Atlas gives me is an increased elemental damage bonus by 12%, and that normal attacks have a chance to have a small orb deal an additional 160% attack as damage for 15 seconds, and then this can also occur once every 30 seconds. Now, because of how quickly Mona attacks, this actually occurs probably as soon as the cooldown is up, making it incredibly good for Mona and also to be able to deal damage with that extra 160% attack damage. Now, another good book you can wind up using is the Lost Prayer of the Sacred Wind, because it increases her crit rate and then also increases her movement speed, and then when in battle increases her elemental damage bonus by 8% every 4 seconds, basically giving it to a max of 32%, and this lasts until she either dies or when she leaves combat. If you're free to play, you can actually use books like the Map of Mare, the Wind Sith, and even the Wine and Song. The Map of Mare gives you elemental mastery, which is perfect for a support Mona, then also has the ability when triggering an elemental reaction grants 8% elemental damage bonus for 10 seconds to a max of 2 stacks. Then if you get lucky enough to get the Wind Sith out of the gacha, it gives you critical damage with the special passive ability being that when a character takes the field, they will gain a random theme song for 10 seconds, and this can affect once every 30 seconds, which is increased attack by 60%. All elemental damage is increased by 48%, and then Interlude, which is elemental mastery, is increased by 240. Now, if not for the random nature of this weapon, I honestly think that this would be one of the best, especially since this is at level 1. And then you have the Wine and Song, which is basically gives you energy recharge, and then the passive ability also makes it so that way every character who hails from Mondstadt increases Mona's attack value by 8% for every character, and it also increases her movement speed by 3% for every character. I'm going to be honest with you, I don't even know if this weapon even exists because I have not seen it on anyone, and I don't know of anybody who's been on my chat as this weapon or anybody who actually has this weapon. So take this one with a grain of salt because I haven't seen it. Now, as far as characters are concerned, there are a ton of characters that you can use in your party. To be honest with you, it'd be easier to list characters that don't synergize well with Mona, which at the time of the recording, there aren't very many characters aside from Amber that don't synergize well with Mona. If you're asking a personal opinion, especially since I use main DPS Mona, my favorite characters to use are Fischl, Sucrose, Jean, Bennett, Chi-Chi, Xiangling, and Venti. There are a couple things that I forgot to mention about Mona, one of which being that as you ascend and level up her as a character, she actually gains energy recharge as a base stat, starting out with 100% energy recharge and then leading all the way up to 132%. And then last but not least, but to ascend to Mona, you need a lot of nectar and mushrooms. There's a joke there somewhere. So far we got gear, characters, and weapons out of the way. But what are the benefits of using Mona as a primary DPS? Using Mona as our primary DPS basically means that we have her incredible mobility at our fingertips at any given time. Now, of course, this just means because we won't be needing to swap characters a lot of the time. Now, for a lot of world content, she's actually incredible to use, and despite the current meta definitely being geared towards Electro and Pyro, but her Stellaris Phantasm definitely makes up for a lot of the faults that she might have as a result. Another pro that you might have is you can literally look at her thick thighs all day long and not have to worry about that she's not on your screen. I mean, come on, she's a goddess in her own right. She has her own quest. Even in Fischl's event quest, it's basically her quest. But if you had to talk about an ideal composition for Mona, I think Fischl, Bennett, Xingqiu, and any Anemo support like Sucrose or even Venti. And the reason for that is because even if you decide to use Mona as your primary DPS, you can have other characters use the Viridescent Venerer and the Noblesse Obliged set to be able to boost Mona's damage. Hell, if you have Constellations on Xingqiu, he'll even be able to reduce the Hydro resistance, allowing for Mona to do even more damage. And with characters like Bennett, allowing for his ultimate to boost damage even further. Then if you're using Sucrose, you can use the Tales of the Thrilling Dragon Slayer, or Thrilling Tales of the Dragon Slayer, to even further boost damage even more. Then when it comes to support Mona, you're basically pressing E, allowing enemies to aggro to your Phantom, and then taking advantage of her high energy recharge to be able to spam her ultimate whenever it's up. As a result of this, because she's not primarily out on the field, you can then begin to build her with elemental mastery as a result, because she might even be the trigger to a lot of your elemental reactions. Which for a lot of compositions, kind of like if you're using Kuching as your primary DPS, using Mona as a support would definitely be advantageous because you still get Electro Charge, which it adds a dot or a damage over time to the enemy while still taking advantage of her kit. And again, the reason for this is because let's use Kuching as the example. Kuching attacks incredibly quickly and her elemental aura is definitely always on the enemy because of how quickly she attacks. If you're anything like me, then Mona might actually be one of your favorite characters. Then as a result, it actually helps a lot to be able to use your favorite character in a lot of your compositions. Luckily enough, Mona is one of those characters that have no shortage in reasons to be able to put her into your comp. But now I pass off the question to you. How do you use Mona? Do you use her as a DPS? Do you use her as a sub DPS? Do you use her as a burst damage support? Or do you use her purely as a support? That's a question you guys can answer down in the comments below. Hopefully this video helped you guys out. My name is Kaoiji, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Stay awesome, stay beautiful, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace. I'm out.